there, sweet friend, and welcome back to Migraine Relief Hotline. I'm Kelli, the migraine dietitian, and each week I'll be answering your biggest migraine questions so you can feel more confident and in control. Now, before we dive into today's question, which is all about how to exercise without triggering migraine, I wanted to chat with you a little bit about one of our cats. So we have a very old cat. He's like 16. His name is Xerxes. He is always been an old man. He's always had health issues. He's my baby. But recently, he's been trying to sneak outside. And he's an indoor cat. He's always been an indoor cat. But he is just obsessed with getting outside. And he actually did escape the other day for like 2 hours before we even realized he was missing. So even though he's an indoor cat, we got him an air tag, an Apple air tag, and a collar. So now he wears that and he hates it. He is constantly scratching at it, but it's a good thing we got it because he's already tried to escape like 3 more times since we've gotten that collar. Now let's get into today's question. A quick note before we get started, I'm a dietitian, but I'm not your dietitian. The information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your health routine. All right, so today's question comes from Paige, and they asked, is there a best type of exercise to do for migraine prevention? This is such a good question and something that I think a lot of us with migraine are confused about because we know, from research that exercise is beneficial for migraine. Like Paige asked, it can be helpful for migraine prevention and reduce migraine frequency and severity. But at the same time, a lot of us feel like exercise is a trigger. So how do we balance these two things? Now, let's start with there's no one best exercise for everyone with migraine, right? But there are types of movement that tend to be more supportive when we're talking about building resilience and raising your threshold, not only for migraine, but for exercise itself. So let's break that down a little bit. We know exercise can help with migraine for a few different reasons. It can help with blood sugar regulation. It can be supportive for hormones and not just, estrogen and progesterone, but also your stress hormones and others. It can be helpful for digestion, for gut motility, making sure you have, a regular digestive system. It, of course, is good for your nervous system resilience as long as you're not overdoing it. And it can even help with your sleep quality, circulation, lymphatic flow, metabolism. So it's good for a lot of different things. It also helps increase endorphins and helps your body become more adaptable to stress, both physical and emotional, which is really valuable when we're talking about raising your migraine threshold. We want you to be more resilient to stress, especially if you feel like stress is a major migraine trigger for you, and exercise can help you do this. But exercise can also be a trigger, right? If your nervous system is already dysregulated or your migraine threshold is really low, intense workouts can feel like more of a stressor rather than something that's supportive. And that's why it's so important to meet your body where it's at and listen to your body and not overdo it. Right? Which I know can be so frustrating, especially if you're someone with, a history of really enjoying exercise and intense exercise. And now you can't do anything, or at least it feels like you can't. So I know that can be very frustrating. But the way to get back closer to where you were before with exercise, or to get to, a point where you'd like to be now, we've got to take it slow and we've got to listen to your body. Too much intensity too quickly can actually increase cortisol. It can also increase your blood pressure too quickly, your heart rate. These things can all affect migraine and act as triggers for you, especially if you're already depleted or you're already kind of in and out of a flare, or you're dealing with daily symptoms, or, even recovering from a migraine attack. So let's talk about what types of movement is going to be most supportive, especially to start out with. So with types of exercise, we want to think about things that are supportive and gentle, but are still going to challenge you a little bit, right? And then we also want to think about specific positions and types of movement that may be triggering for you specifically. So we're going to talk about both of those things. Now, some types of exercise: walking, don't discount walking, because if you think about it, if you're mostly sedentary and you're not really getting much activity right now, a 5 or 10 minute walk is a big improvement, right? Especially if you're doing it, 5 to 7 days a week, even 3 days a week. So don't underestimate small changes, small increases in movement. So walking absolutely counts. You can also look into restorative yoga or even just stretching. Those can be really beneficial. Gentle weight training can be helpful, especially if you have hormone concerns, because weight training, strength training can help support healthy hormone levels. Mobility exercises can be helpful, light resistant training. And then some people like to incorporate something called movement snacks. So these are like 3-minute stretch breaks or walk breaks that can help you just keep moving. And then don't forget about chores, because I will, hear my clients say all the time, "Oh, I don't do any exercise. I'm really not moving." And then they go to tell me that they're deep cleaning their house once a week, and all of these different chores that they're doing, those count. Cleaning your house counts. Running after your kids counts. Taking your dog on a walk 3 times a day counts. So don't ignore those, because you might already be doing more activity than you even realize. Now, I wanted to mention some specific types of movement that can be triggering. And this is especially good to remember if you're doing like yoga or any related type of exercise, because movements that require inversions. So essentially, if your head is below your heart. So if you think about yoga, if you're doing like downward facing dog, that's when you're like forming a triangle with the floor. That is not going to be supportive for a lot of people with migraine, because the blood's going to rush to your head, and that can trigger an attack for a lot of people. So avoiding inversions, avoiding abrupt positional changes. So if you've ever seen someone do a burpee or you've done one yourself, first of all, I'm so sorry. But second of all, you're quickly changing position from standing to kind of like squatting to a plank, like on the floor. Those abrupt and repeated positional changes can also be a trigger for us. So avoiding those is a great idea. Avoiding anything that's going to strain your neck is also, always a great idea, but especially for those of us with migraine, because that's going to really increase our odds of experiencing an attack. And then trying to not overdo it when it comes to intensity, right? And that's actually going to help transition us into the next thing I wanted to chat about, which is kind of just general types of exercise to avoid, at least for now. So high intensity workouts, especially high intensity interval training, can be beneficial, but not necessarily for us. Not necessarily if you're dealing with a low migraine threshold and you find that it triggers you, right? If a type of exercise triggers you, it's not the type for you. Okay, so high intensity workouts, long cardio sessions like running miles, hot yoga. I love a good hot yoga session, but the heat can be way too much for honestly most of us. So if you're sensitive to heat, you probably want to avoid hot yoga. And then again, anything that feels draining to you or just makes you feel bad, that's not the best fit for you. And that's okay. You might be able to build back up to those things like we talked about earlier, but they're not going to be the best place to start, right? If we're trying to prevent migraine attacks and regulate your system and increase your tolerance to exercise, okay? I wanted to give you some tips for how to prep your body for exercise. So you want to make sure that you are not exercising in a fasted state. So an example of this would be waking up and before breakfast doing some sort of exercise. That is not ideal. It's not ideal for those of us with migraine, because when you're in a fasted state, your blood sugar is going to be lower. When you start exercising, your muscles start producing more insulin, which means that your blood sugar is going to drop further because your body's using that sugar for fuel. So this further drop in blood sugar can be a trigger for us, and it can also just make you feel yucky. So don't exercise in a fasted state. At least have a snack beforehand, if not a full meal. Drink electrolytes and water before and after and potentially during. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're hydrated, especially if you are sweating with whatever exercise you're doing. You need to be replacing those electrolytes so you're not having fluid imbalance, electrolyte imbalance, which can trigger attacks. Listen to your body. right? We already talked about that. But listen to your body, honor what your body's telling you. If your body's telling you this is too much, slow it down, take a break. It's okay. So this is my real life example. This is from one of my clients. Oh my goodness, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now at this point, but this story always just sticks in my head. She was in Raise Your Threshold. She came to me feeling completely overwhelmed and honestly upset, because she had always been a runner. She loved running. It was her stress relief. It was something that really benefited her mental health. But as her migraine got worse and as she developed vestibular migraine, she wasn't able to run anymore. And this was devastating to her. So we created a plan together. A big part of our plan was supporting her overall health. So we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on blood sugar support, nervous system support, gut health, hormone balance, all of those things that we always talk about here at the Migraine Dietitian, right? But alongside those things, we shifted our focus from I can't run anymore to what can we do now? What can you tolerate? So we started with just like 5 to 10 minute walks once or twice a day. That's all we started with. And as she felt able, she increased the length of those walks. So she started at 10 minutes a day, and then she increased to 15 and then 20, and eventually she got up to 30-minute walks. She did that slowly and didn't increase until she felt good about it and confident about it. And then after it was a few weeks, maybe a month or so, she was able to start introducing some jogging. So she would jog for like literally 5 seconds and then she would go back to walking. And she slowly increased those jogging intervals. And then after about 6 months, she was running again multiple times a week. And this was so exciting to get that message from her the first time that she was able to get back out there and run. And this is not my only example of clients that I've worked with who were runners and were able to get back into running again. I just had a client graduate recently who, very similar story, except that she was able to incorporate running again much more quickly just because of her personal journey. So it is possible. You can get back into exercising and feeling good in your body. There is not one best exercise, but there is a best approach, right? Start where you are, choose movement that supports you and doesn't stress your system or make you feel worse. Be consistent, even if it's small. Support your body, right, with food, electrolytes, and build from there. Now, I also wanted to mention with movement, if you really need help with this, I highly recommend working with like a physical therapist who specializes in helping people with migraine. You can also look for a qualified personal trainer. And this may sound strange, but I recommend looking for a personal trainer who has advanced certification in working with the geriatric population because, hear me out, they're going to have more experience with taking it slow and helping you work with your body and increase your movement over time. They're not going to push you too hard, or at least they shouldn't. The personal trainer that I worked with, she was training to become certified in, geriatric exercise education or something like that. And she was fantastic. She was so great. So I would recommend looking for someone like that. And that is it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Migraine Relief Hotline. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, follow, and share it with a friend who you think may find it helpful. If you have a question that you want me to answer on the podcast, you can submit it anytime using the link listed in the show notes below. And for bonus episodes and live hangs, make sure to check out our Patreon. It's also linked in the show notes, and it's a great way to support the podcast. And of course, as always, if you're ready for more personalized support, my Raise Your Threshold membership is here to help you dive even deeper into managing migraine. You can check it out also in the show notes, or you can always DM me on Instagram to chat more at the.migraine.dietitian. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.